Johannesburg, the city of gold, once a beacon of economic prosperity, is now grappling with a stark reality. Crumbling infrastructure, roads are riddled with potholes and non-functional street lights. These are the hallmarks of a city in decline. This week, a concerned resident launched a Jozi versus Jozi on X. The page showcases the city's deteriorating state and documenting the decay with images and videos comparing areas from 10 to 15 years ago to what they have become. But why is this happening and what can be done to reverse this? Let's now bring in urban development expert at Genesis Analytics, Lael Bethlehem, and we're also joined by Marc Latilla, who's an author of Johannesburg Then and Now. Very good morning to you both. Thank you so much for making time for us. So when we speak about Johannesburg, I was just thinking now about Dorothy Masuku's Hamba Nontsokolo Uyekoli. Which speaks about the migrant labor system, but also spoke about aspirational living. But things have changed now. They're not what they used to be. And Marc, let me start off with you. When you saw the account, Jozi versus Jozi, and the pictures that they've been posting, what went through your mind, considering the work that you've done documenting the city of Joburg?
I think one of the interesting things with that is it's something that I've noticed myself with a lot of the research that I've been doing, especially spending a lot of time on Google Earth, which is a great resource. And it has images of Johannesburg going back, it's around 15 years, I think from around 2009. There are some of the early images. And when doing some comparisons between what the city looked like then, which is not really that long ago, compared to what it looks like now, you can actually see, it's like visible, how much decay there is. And you compare that to old photographs of the city from, even from the 1920s or 1930s and 1960s. It's just, it's just, the decay is just, it's enormous. And, the thought has been through my head as well, like, how does one fix this? It's an enormous job.
Yeah. And Marc, for you, is there any image or area, location in the city of Joburg that stands out for you in stark contrast to what it used to be? I'm just going to quickly show you a picture here of the Telkom Towers, which of course is part of the Johannesburg skyline. Very, very, very significant that you have that particular skyline. It is the Telkom Tower. So this is a picture of the Telkom Tower. It is a bit obscured there by the tree, but just behind it is a picture of the Telkom Tower. This is from 2010. Now look at what that looks like. The very same street in 2023. That is what it looks like. Look at that building. Look at the tree itself. But for you, Marc, are there any locations that stand out for you?
Far too many to mention. I look at a lot of street views. For example, around N Street in Doornfontein, parts of Hillbrow, parts of Berea, some of the inner city suburbs like Jeppystown and Bertram's and Belgravia. There's just so much. I mean, pretty much everywhere you go, you'll find these things. At the same time, you'll also find pockets of the city that are really well run. There are certain blocks that are well maintained all across the city, and especially like in Hillbrow. Hillbrow gets a very bad rap at the moment, but there are buildings in Hillbrow that are really, really well maintained.
Okay.
Of course, there's reasons for that.
Yeah. Lael, for you, what is the story? What does it tell us about the city of Johannesburg?
Well, I think the thing about Joburg is that it's a city with such incredible potential. And it's a city that we all love. Those of us who were born here, those of us who've come here during the course of our lives. Johannesburg has a lot going for it. But the most important thing it has going for it is its people. There are incredible pockets of people all around Johannesburg who are taking responsibility for the city, who are taking on the management of parks, who are taking on the management of areas. There's an organization called Jozi, My Jozi, that is trying really hard to work with the city. There are very vibrant businesses. There's lots of very, very interesting small business in Johannesburg. There are large corporates born and bred in Johannesburg and succeeding. So I think the people of Joburg are amazing. And I'm often, just struck by the continued commitment and creativity of ordinary people and of businesses to this incredible city of ours. And in many ways, Johannesburg is still a brilliant an outstanding city. But I think, Aldrin, we are being let down, and we are being let down by the people that we've elected to run the city. The government of the city of Johannesburg is in utter disarray and has been now for many years. And they are failing the people of Johannesburg. And we really need to do something serious to address the decline of infrastructure, the decline of service delivery. And that means having a city government that is really inspired and committed to the people and to the city.
Yeah. And here's the thing about the city of Johannesburg, again, Lael, is that some people are arguing that the city of Johannesburg was never created or built to house so many people in terms of population living in the inner city. That number, of course, has increased as people are coming from various areas, various provinces, various countries as well, which also, of course, gave rise to what we now refer to as Gauteng, Egoli, and the gold that was discovered in the Witwatersrand. But the impact on that, on the infrastructure of the city and how the city is supposed to respond to that, because you also have the right to live wherever you want to live.
Well, I would say that a growing city is in many ways an asset. And certainly we are not the densest city on earth, and neither are we the fastest growing. There are cities of over, say, 20 million people. You take a city like, say, Mexico City, which faces many of the same pressures that we do. Large inward migration from the countryside, very, very large population, very dense. Other African cities too. And I would say growth is not an easy thing to deal with. And particularly in Southern Africa, we have a lot of people moving to the city of Johannesburg for opportunity. So I'd say it's not an easy thing to deal with, but it also comes with its own advantages. It can bring a lot of new energy and actually new resources as well. So the challenge of running a growing city is in many ways a good challenge. It's a much better challenge than a city which is not attracting people, that's not attracting energy. The thing is, though, that to deal with a growing population, you need ongoing investment. You need ongoing investment, particularly in infrastructure. And you also need to deal with problems like hijacked buildings that must be confronted head on. These are not easy problems to solve, but it is also not of a degree of difficulty that should be beyond us in South Africa. We should be able, in a city like Johannesburg, to corral the resources, the expertise, the money, the energy, the expertise to just get on with addressing these challenges, even if they are sometimes difficult challenges.
Yeah, and Marc, again, with the work that you've done, looking at some of the pictures that you've taken of the infrastructure, once again, the architecture that speaks to this kaleidoscope of various communities that have influenced what the city of Joburg has become. What role do you think property developers can actually play to change the face of the city and also to make it more attractive? Not necessarily just when it comes to issues around access to transportation and being able to get to work as quickly as possible, but a place that I can actually call home and bring up my children in.
It's a very good question. One I don't know if I can answer properly. It's not really my sphere, but having spent a lot of time in the city, I mean, I grew up in Johannesburg. I lived in town in Hillbrow, and a lot of the work that I've been doing, one of the developments that came around when I first started this was the Maboneng development in JP's town. And it was a very exciting development at the time. They were taking old buildings, repurposing them, turning them from sort of mild industrial buildings into accommodation, creating spaces on the street level, restaurants, entertainment venues. That was great, and that's the kind of thing that, to me, seems like it could work, is repurposing what's there to cater to the people that are living in that space. I just wanted to add that a lot of the issues that we have in Johannesburg go back to the early times. I mean, Johannesburg has always been poorly planned. From when they first laid out the streets, in the late 1800s, there was always spatial issues. You know, the reason why the blocks in town are so small is because the government at the time wanted to maximize the revenue that they were going to receive from the leases and the rentals. So there was no thought as to what is the city going to be like in the future. In fact, they didn't even want Johannesburg to happen. They figured it would run out of steam, you know, that there was a bit of a gold rush, the gold would disappear, and so would all the people. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. And successive governments have kind of played a part in it being such a difficult place to manage. You know, not forgetting things like even before apartheid, there was sort of spatial issues. People were moved out of the city. Undesirable people were moved out of the city. There were slum clearances as early as 1905, 1906. A huge slum clearance in the 1930s. And of course, there were things like Sophia Town in the 1950s and Fetus in the 1960s. And these kinds of things, you're pushing people out of the city, trying to make the city livable for one type of person, has caused a lot of these issues. So and we blame the current government for some of the issues, and absolutely, you know, they're definitely to blame. There's definitely issues there, but a lot of the problems come from way further back. Another interesting development was the Diamond City development, also sort of just west of Maboneng. That was done a couple of years ago, where they again took some buildings, revamped them, created a lovely area. But these developments cost a fortune. I mean, I don't remember what the exact figure was for that development. It was maybe 4 or 5 blocks, but it was a really big investment. And town is big. I mean, if you walk or drive through town and you see how much is there, it almost seems overwhelming. Well, certainly to me, you know, with who doesn't have that kind of experience.
Yeah, Marc, when was the last time that you were in the Joburg CBD?
I'm there every week.
You're there every week, so you know what's happening. Lael, for you as well, when was the last time that you were in the Joburg CBD? But I want to add something else as well to that conversation, just based on what Marc has now raised, and that's the issue around gentrification and the impact of gentrification. How do we ensure that when we do create these spaces, that these spaces do not only become spaces for a certain wealthy few?
Well, I was in the inner city on Saturday. I was in Hillbrow, and really interesting to see what's going on in Hillbrow. Like Marc says, there are little pockets of Hillbrow where a lot of effort is being made, not by the city, but by residents, by a city improvement district there. And I've also spent some time recently in the Marshalltown area, and also interesting to see how uneven things are. There are certainly areas where property investors and others are making a huge difference to the city. But what property investors need in order to be able to invest is they need a functional planning system. And the planning system in Johannesburg, the simple regulatory system of approving building plans, of zoning, of rezoning, and that sort of thing, has all but broken down because of the closure of the Metro Centre. You know, I don't know if people know this. The Metro Centre was closed down. And almost no contingency plan was put in place. The planners are working from home. They open up the planning office once a week for 3 hours. Wow. Property investors are finding it very difficult to invest in a city that doesn't do just the basic functions like that. And then, Aldrin, to address your issue of gentrification, I think this is a very old worry in Johannesburg. I mean, I was the CEO of the Johannesburg Development Agency from 2005 to 2010. And that was a time when the Joburg CBD was really improving a lot, and there was a lot of investment. And people always worried about gentrification. I think what's happened in the Joburg CBD, though, is that fear has been unfounded. Instead, what has happened in the inner city of Johannesburg is a lot of investment in affordable housing. The biggest investments that have taken place in Joburg over the last 20 or 25 years have been investments in affordable housing. So affordable housing is housing that is priced somewhere between, say, 3,000 and 6,000 Rand a month. And tens of thousands of those units have been developed. The Jewel City example that Marc gave, which is an outstanding development. I was involved in redeveloping a number of buildings like Shell House, which now, boast 500 units. fantastic large companies that are operating in town, and lots of small developers as well. So I think there are lots of people investing in the CBD and trying to offer decent accommodation at reasonable prices. But what they need is the city to do their job.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That was urban development expert there at Genesis Analytics, Lael Bethlehem, as well as Marc Latilla, who's the author of Johannesburg Then and Now. Here's another view of Johannesburg Then and Now. This is Rahima Musa. I want you to show this picture quickly. This is a GP Street. Back in 2010, this was during, you remember, not COVID, but during the FIFA World Cup. 2010, this is what the street used to look like. It was called GP Street at that time, and now it's called Rahima Musa, and look at what it looks like now. This is a picture that was taken last year, 2023.